The boy stumbled forward, carrying wood heavier than his small body could manage. His bare feet pressed into the rough dirt path and left faint trails of blood from the cuts on his skin. His shoulders bent and his breathing ragged, yet he dared not stop. Behind him a sharp voice echoed through the still evening air, "Hurry up or you will sleep outside." Again the voice belonged to his stepmother, her arms folded across her chest, her cold eyes following him like chains wrapped around his every move. He did not cry anymore. His tears had dried long ago when he first learned that no amount of begging or pleading softened her heart. She treated him like a burden, a shadow of someone she hated, someone who had left her alone with this child she never wanted, so she made him her slave. Each day he carried wood, each day he fetched water, each day he ate last and least. The villagers sometimes watched in silence from behind their doors and windows, but no one interfered. They whispered among themselves that fate had dealt the boy a cruel hand, and that the woman was dangerous to cross. She had a tongue sharp enough to cut, and a glare that promised revenge against anyone who dared challenge her. So the boy lived in quiet suffering while the world around him looked away. But that evening something shifted. The boy staggered under the bundle of wood and collapsed to his knees. The rough branches scraped his face and arms, but before he could push himself up, the stepmother's shadow loomed above him. "Useless child," she hissed and raised her hand as if to strike him again. Then a sound broke the silence. Footsteps steady and firm. The woman turned sharply, her lips curling into irritation. "Who dares interrupt?" she demanded, but her words faltered when her eyes met a tall figure approaching from the edge of the road. It was a man in his early 40s, his clothes neat and well tailored, his presence calm but filled with authority. He stopped a few paces away and looked at the boy, his expression shifting from surprise to quiet fury. The boy tried to rise, trembling as though ashamed to be seen like this. "What is going on here?" the man asked, his voice steady but edged with steel. The stepmother's face hardened. She forced a smile, though her eyes still burned. "This boy is lazy," she said. "I must discipline him, or he will grow up worthless." The man said nothing for a long moment, his gaze moving from the trembling child to the bundle of wood, far too heavy for such a small frame. He stepped closer and crouched near the boy, gently lifting the branches from his back. The boy flinched, expecting anger, but instead he felt the weight lifted and air filling his lungs for the first time in days. The man spoke softly but with unshakable certainty. "This is not discipline, this is cruelty." The woman's smile vanished, her eyes narrowed and venom dripped from her voice. "Who are you to tell me how to raise my child?" Man stood tall, his presence towering over her, his voice low but commanding. "I am someone who will not ignore what I see," he said. "Someone who refuses to look away while a child is turned into a star." Boy stared wide-eyed, his heart pounding. For the first time in his life someone had spoken against her, someone had seen his suffering and dared to call it wrong. Yet he did not know who this man was or why he came. With their stepmother's lips trembled between fury and fear, but she spat her words with defiance. "This is none of your business. Leave now, before you regret it." The man's eyes did not waver, his jaw tightened and his hands curled slightly as if holding back his anger. "No," he said firmly, "I will not leave, not until I know this boy is safe." The air grew heavy. The boy sat frozen, his small hands clutching his knees, torn between terror of his stepmother and the faint spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, everything was about to change. Then the man's next words cut the silence like a blade. "Tell me, child, what is your name?" The boy's lips parted but no sound came, his throat dry, his eyes darted nervously to the stepmother, who glared at him like a snake ready to strike. But the man's calm gaze steadied him, and finally a whisper escaped from the boy's mouth. "My name is Daniel." The man nodded slowly, his voice soft but filled with promise. "Daniel," he said, "you will not suffer alone anymore." The stepmother stepped forward, her rage boiling over, but the man raised his hand, not in threat but in warning, and the villagers, hidden in their homes, pressed closer to their windows, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding, a confrontation that would not end as easily as the others. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt something stir inside him, something unfamiliar, something like hope. The night had not yet fallen, but Daniel knew the world around him had already shifted. Nothing would ever be the same. Again the stepmother's voice cracked like thunder across the evening air. "You have no right to interfere," she shouted, her hands trembling though she tried to hide it. The villagers peered from their half-open windows, their whispers rising as curiosity pulled them closer. No one had ever dared stand against her before, not until now. Daniel clutched the edge of his torn shirt, his heart racing faster than it ever had before. The man's presence gave him a strange sense of protection, yet also filled him with fear, for he knew his stepmother's fury. She would not let this pass quietly. She never did. A man turned his face toward the boy's bruised arms, the skin raw from rope burns, the small hands calloused like those of an old man. His jaw tightened further, and he said to the woman, "Discipline is meant to guide a child, not destroy him. You have crossed a line." The stepmother's lips curled into a bitter sneer. She spat her words like poison. "What do you care? He is nothing but dead weight, nothing but the shadow of his useless father." Her voice shook with venom, and for the first time the villagers heard the truth spoken aloud. She never saw the boy as her own, only as a reminder of what she despised. The man's eyes darkened as if he had heard enough. He stepped closer, and his voice lowered into a tone that carried more threat than shouting ever could. "If you continue like this, I will make sure the law knows every detail, and you will not escape." The woman laughed, a sharp, cruel laugh. "The law," she said, "these people fear me. They will never speak. They will never betray me. They watch from their windows and whisper, but none will raise their voice against me. And you are just a stranger." Daniel's body trembled. He wanted to believe the man could save him, but the woman's words stung with bitter truth. No one had ever stepped forward for him before. Why would this man be different? Why no? The man glanced briefly at the villagers, then raised his voice so that all could hear. "Is this true? Will you all stay silent while a child suffers before your very eyes?" he asked, his words cutting through the heavy gray murmur rippled among the hidden faces. A curtain shifted, a door creaked open, but fear still chained their tongues. None dared move forward, not yet. The stepmother smiled, as if victory was hers. She reached for Daniel's arm, yanking him upward. "Harshly, see, he belongs to me," she snapped. "No one will take him away." But the boy cried out in pain, and before she could strike him again, the man caught her wrist with one swift motion, his grip strong and unyielding. Her eyes widened with shock. His gaze bore into hers like fire. "I warned you," he said, his voice cold enough to freeze the night. Daniel's breath caught. The villagers gasped. The woman's face twisted with rage, yet beneath her fury, a flicker of fear passed through her eyes. She yanked her arm free, but stumbled back as though the ground itself rejected her. The man bent down and placed his hand gently on Daniel's shoulder. His voice softened. "Daniel, look at me. You are not alone anymore," he whispered. The boy's chest rose and fell with uneven breaths, his eyes wide with disbelief. But before he could answer, the woman screamed, "You dare defy me!" Her voice shattered the silence like broken glass. Her body shook with hatred. "You will regret this, both of you." Villagers whispered louder now, their fear mixing with a strange new courage. One by one, doors opened and people stepped into the street. They did not yet speak, but their presence was a silent challenge against her rule. For the first time she saw the cracks forming in the wall of silence she had built. The man straightened his shoulders and faced her squarely. "My name is Samuel," he declared, his voice echoing strong and unshaken, "and I will not leave until this child is free." Daniel's mind spun. Samuel, the name echoed like a promise in his ears. The first time a man had stood for him, the first time anyone had dared to see his pain as more than his burden. But even as hope sparked within him, he knew his stepmother would not surrender so easily. She never did. Her face darkened with something colder than rage, something that smelled of secrets. "Samuel, you know nothing of me," she hissed. "You know nothing of what this boy carries. He is cursed. He will drag you down into the same pit his father fell into." Daniel froze, his stomach twisted. What did she mean, cursed? What pit? What secret about his father had she just revealed? His thoughts raced, his chest heavy with confusion, but Samuel's hand pressed steady on his shoulder, anchoring him back. "Cursed or not," Samuel said firmly, "no child deserves chains." His words fell like stones, crushing her. "Excuse." The villagers gasped again, murmurs spreading like wildfire. Could it be true? Was there a hidden truth behind the boy's suffering? The woman's face twisted further. She turned sharply and pointed her finger at Samuel. "You think you are strong enough to fight me?" she hissed, her voice trembling with fury. "Then you have no idea what I am capable of." Her words hung heavy in the air. Daniel's heart pounded. He knew her cruelty. He had seen her break things and people with her rage, but there was something new in her tone, something dangerous and desperate. Stood firm, his eyes never leaving hers, his voice like iron. "Then show me." The street fell into silence. Not even the wind dared move. Daniel's breath caught. He could feel the storm building around them, and he knew this was only the beginning. For the first time he wondered not only what would happen next, but what dark truth his stepmother was hiding about his father, and why. Samuel had appeared now of all times. The night crept in, shadows stretched long across the dirt road, and the villagers waited, frozen between fear and hope, the air sharp with tension. And Daniel realized one thing with chilling clarity. Whatever came next would decide everything. The villagers stood frozen in the growing night, their eyes shifting between Samuel and the stepmother, their whispers spreading like sparks through dry grass. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest, every beat louder than the last. He had never seen his stepmother look like this, her face twisted not only with rage, but with something darker, something that felt like fear. She stepped back, her voice rising, though it trembled. "You think you are a hero, Samuel," she spat. "You think saving this boy will make you noble, but you do not know what lies buried in his blood." Samuel frowned, his grip on Daniel's shoulder tightening. "What are you saying?" he demanded. The villagers leaned closer, drawn by the sharp edge in her words. The woman sneered, her eyes glittering with hatred. "His father was no saint," she hissed. "He was a traitor, a coward who left debts behind, debts that fall upon the boy." Daniel's throat closed. His father's name had been little more than a shadow in his memory. He had asked before, but every question was met with silence or punishment. Now the truth twisted in the air like a blade waiting to strike. Manuel's voice dropped low, calm yet filled with iron. "Debts do not make a child a slave," he said. "Debts die with the man who owed them, not with the innocent left behind." But the woman laughed, bitter and sharp. "Innocence," she mocked. "This boy will grow into the same weakness, the same disgrace, and I will not let him drag me down with him. So I broke him before the world." Could Daniel's breath shook, tears threatened to rise, but he forced them down. Her words cut deep, but Samuel's hand remained steady on his shoulder, grounding him against the storm. Samuel's voice rang out across the road. "Then you are the disgrace, not him." The villagers stirred at his words, the chain of silence that bound them cracking wider. Then before the stepmother's eyes darted to the villagers, her sneer faltering for a moment. She raised her hand, pointing at Samuel. "You think you can turn them against me? You think you can shame me in my own home?" Her voice wavered, but she forced it louder. The crowd shifted uneasily, and one old man finally stepped forward, his cane tapping against the dirt, his voice cracked with age, but strong with truth. "We have watched long enough," he said, his eyes fixed on the woman. "We saw how you treated the boy. We heard his cries in the night. We turned away because we feared you, but perhaps we feared the wrong thing." The woman's face paled, her lips parted as if to shout, but no sound came. The villagers murmured agreement, their courage slowly building. Samuel's presence had sparked something long buried. Daniel's chest ached, his eyes wide with disbelief. The same villagers who had hidden behind curtains now stood with him. He felt the spark of hope grow brighter, though still fragile. Stepmother's eyes narrowed, venom flashing in her gaze. She spat curses under her breath, then shouted, "Enough, you all think you know me, you know nothing." She turned sharply toward Samuel, her voice cutting through the whispers. "If you protect him, then his curse will fall upon you too. His father's enemies will come for him, and they will come for you." Samuel's jaw tightened. He did not flinch. "Curse or no curse," he said firmly, "I will not abandon him." His voice carried like thunder through the night. Daniel's heart raced, his body trembling. His stepmother's words dug into him like thorns. Curse, enemies, debts. His father's shadow hung heavier than ever before, but Samuel's words rang louder than the fear. "You are not alone anymore." Woman's body shook, her fury boiling, her eyes blazing as though she would tear Samuel apart. But then something shifted. Her lips curved into a smile, not of defeat, but of something far more dangerous. "Fine," she hissed. "Keep him then, but remember this, you cannot protect him from what is coming." With those words, she turned her back and stormed into the house, slamming the door so hard it rattled through the village. Silence followed, heavy, intense. The villagers stood in stunned, quiet, unsure what to say, unsure what the woman meant by what is coming. Some muttered that she had gone mad, others whispered that maybe she spoke the truth, that perhaps shadows from the boy's father's past would soon arrive. Samuel looked down at Daniel, the boy's small body shaking in confusion and fear. Samuel knelt, his voice calm and steady. "Daniel, listen to me. Whatever comes, we face it together." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He had never heard such words before. Together, the word felt like a shield wrapping around him, stronger than anything he had known. His lips trembled as he whispered, "Thank you." Samuel pulled him close in a protective embrace. The villagers watching quietly, some nodding their silent support, yet unease lingered in Their eyes for the stepmother's final words still echoed in the air, like an unseen storm. As the night deepened, Samuel led Daniel away from the house, the villagers parting silently to let them pass. Some whispered blessings, others warnings. The boy walked beside Samuel, his body aching but his heart filled with something new, hope mixed with fear. But as they turned the corner, a faint sound drifted across the dark road, the distant creak of a wagon wheels grinding against the dirt. Voices, low and rough, carried by the wind, shadows moving under the pale moonlight approaching fast. Samuel's eyes narrowed, his instincts sharp. Daniel clutched his arm, his voice trembling. "Who is that?" he whispered. Samuel's jaw clenched, his hand tightening protectively on the boy. "Stay close," he said, his voice steady, though his gaze locked on the approaching figures. And then from the shadows came a voice, deep and chilling. "Is this where the boy lives?" Daniel's blood ran cold. His stepmother's warning echoed in his head. "What is coming?" The night held its breath as the figures stepped into view, their faces hidden, their intentions darker than the road behind them. The night air grew heavier as the wagon rolled closer, its wheels grinding against stone and dirt, the sound growing sharper with every turn. Samuel's body stiffened, his instincts warning him that danger had arrived. Daniel clung to his sleeve, his small hand trembling as he whispered, "Samuel." "Who are they?" From the darkness stepped 3 men, their faces half hidden beneath hoods, their voices low, yet filled with menace. The tallest of them scanned the villagers, gathered in silence, his gaze finally locking on Daniel. "So this is the boy," he said, his tone almost satisfied. Moved in front of Daniel, his shoulders broad, his stance unshaken, and his voice sharp. "Who are you, and what business do you have with him?" The man's lips curled into a thin smile. "Our business is old," he said. "Our business is with his father, and debts unpaid must always be collected." Daniel's heart skipped. The word debts echoed again, his stepmother's cruel voice ringing in his head. Debts, curses, disgrace. He stared at the men, his chest tightening with dread. What had his father done? Who were these people? Samuel's voice deepened, his tone unyielding. "A child does not inherit the sins of his father. Whatever quarrel you had, it died with him." The hooded man shook his head slowly. "No, the bloodline carries the weight," he said, his voice chilling. "And this boy carries more than weight. He carries what was stolen." The villagers murmured uneasily, their fear rising, their curiosity boiling. Daniel's eyes widened. Stolen? What had his father taken? What curse had been whispered over his name? His stepmother's shadow stretched across his memory, her words now sharper than ever. The second man stepped forward, shorter but broad, with arms like stone. He pointed a rough finger at Samuel. "Step aside, stranger. This does not concern you. The boy is ours." Samuel's hand dropped slightly to Daniel's shoulder, his voice calm yet fierce. "It does concern me because I will not let you take him." The tallest man tilted his head, his smile fading. "You would risk yourself for him?" "Why?" he asked. "Because," Samuel answered with steady fire, "because no one else ever has." Daniel's breath caught his chest, heavy with disbelief, his heart thundering. Samuel's words cut through the fear like light breaking darkness. The men exchanged glances, their silence heavier. Then words. The third man finally spoke, his voice raspy. "The boy's father stole from us and died. Before paying back the price, we swore his son would carry it instead. And tonight we collect." The villagers gasped, their voices rising in fear. "What price? What curse?" Daniel's legs weakened, his hands shook, his mind spinning. Samuel's arm tightened, steadying him. Samuel's gaze hardened. "Then you will have to go through me." His voice like steel, his eyes locked on theirs. The tallest man chuckled darkly. "Then so be it." His hand lifted a signal, and in an instant the broad man lunged forward, his massive frame crashing toward Samuel like a storm. Samuel shoved Daniel behind him, his body twisting, his fist rising. The sound of flesh meeting flesh cracked through the night. The broad man staggered back, his face twisted with rage. The villagers gasped, some backing away in terror. Daniel's eyes widened, his voice small. "Samuel, Samuel." But Samuel did not falter his stance, rooted, his fists steady. The broad man roared, charging again, his arms swinging wide. Samuel ducked, striking hard into his ribs. The man fell to his knees, coughing blood onto the dirt. The tallest man's smile faded completely, his voice turned sharp enough. "Bring the boy," he ordered. The third man moved swiftly, slipping behind Samuel toward Daniel. Daniel froze, fear freezing his legs, but Samuel's voice rang out, "Run, Daniel, now." Daniel's heart pounded, his legs obeyed, though terror tried to hold him. He ran down the narrow path, his breath ragged, his mind screaming. He heard footsteps behind him, chasing fast, his eyes Darting through the darkness, Samuel's shout echoed behind him, "I will find you. Daniel, hold on." But the night swallowed his voice, the figures' shadows closing in around. The boy, the villagers, watching helpless, their fear too great, their courage too weak. Daniel stumbled, his knees scraping against the ground. He pushed forward, but a hand closed around his arm, yanking him back. The raspy voice hissed in his ear, "Your father could not escape, and neither will you." Daniel struggled, tears streaking his dirt-covered face, his voice breaking, "Let me go, let me go." But the grip tightened like iron. Suddenly, a sound cut through the night, the crack of Samuel's voice, fierce and unbroken. "Release him." Now Daniel's eyes shot up, hope flaring. Samuel stood a few steps away, bruised but unbroken, his eyes blazing with fury, stronger than fire. The villagers stood behind him now, more of them than before, their faces torn between fear and courage. The tallest man laughed. "You think you can protect him from us, from his blood, from his fate?" His laugh echoed, but there was strain in his voice. Samuel's defiance had begun to crack. His confidence. Samuel stepped closer, his fists clenched. "If fate is chains, then I will break them." His voice thundered across the night. Daniel's heart surged, but fear still coiled within him, for the men did not retreat. Their grip did not weaken, and from the wagon something else began to stir. A heavy chest bound with iron chains, its lid shifting as if something alive waited inside. The tallest man's voice dropped into a whisper, cold and merciless. "His father stole what was inside this chest, and the boy will pay the price." The lid of the chest creaked open, and Daniel's breath froze in his lungs. The chest groaned as the chains rattled loose, its lid rising slowly, as if unwilling to reveal its burden. Daniel's eyes widened, his breath caught his knees, trembling. Samuel's body tensed, ready for whatever horror might crawl into the night. The villagers whispered frantically, their courage wavering again. The tallest man's grin widened, his eyes glinting with hunger. "This is what his father tried to steal from us," he said, his voice filled with venom. "This is the curse that follows the boy. This is the weight of blood and betrayal." Inside the chest lay a bundle wrapped in faded cloth. The air around it thickened with dread. One of the men reached in his hands, trembling with reverence as he lifted it carefully. The cloth unfurled, revealing not gold, not jewels, but a blackened book, its cover worn, its edges scorched as though touched by fire. Daniel stared, his voice small. "What is that?" the raspy man hissed. "It is the ledger of debts, the mark of those who swore allegiance and those who betrayed, and your father's name is burned into its pages." The villagers gasped, murmurs rising, their fear deepening. A cursed book, a ledger of betrayal. Daniel's heart pounded, his father's shadow stretching longer and darker across his soul. Samuel stepped forward, his eyes sharp. "That is nothing but a weapon of fear," he said. "No child should suffer because of words." In an old book, the tall man laughed, cruel and sharp. "The book does not lie." He opened its pages, the brittle paper cracking under his fingers. He turned it toward the boy. "See here, your father's name carved into fire. He betrayed his oath, he stole from us, and he paid with his life. Now you will pay with yours." Daniel's knees buckled, the world spinning, his voice breaking. Why did he do it? Why am I cursed for what he did?" Samuel's hand pressed firm against his back, steadying him, his voice fierce. "You are not cursed, Daniel. You are not your father. You are your own soul, and no book, no man can change that." The villagers stirred, Samuel's words striking deeper than fear, their courage trembling on the edge of awakening. But the tallest man's eyes narrowed, fury flashing. "Then let him prove it. Let him take his father's place, or let him die." The raspy man's grip on Daniel tightened, dragging him closer. Samuel lunged forward, his fist slamming into the man's jaw, the book nearly tumbling from his grasp. Chaos erupted. The villagers screamed, some rushing back into their homes, others edging forward, torn between fear and outrage. Daniel stumbled free, his chest heaving, his eyes darting between Samuel and the men, between the book and the villagers. He felt the weight of the night pressing down upon him. The broad man rose again, blood dripping from his mouth, his rage hotter than before. He roared and swung at Samuel. Samuel ducked, striking hard once more, but the man's strength was monstrous, and Samuel staggered, his breath ragged. Daniel cried out, "Samuel, please." The tall man sneered, "Your protector will fall, and then you will be ours." But in that moment, something inside Daniel broke free. The years of silence, the years of chains, the nights of cruelty, every lash of his stepmother's words, every bruise, every hunger pang, they burned into fire. His voice tore through the night. In ether, villagers froze. The men turned, Daniel's small frame trembling, but his voice no longer weak, no longer broken. He stepped forward, his eyes blazing. "You want me because of him, because of what my father did, but I am not him, I am not his debt, I am not his curse." The raspy man snarled, raising his hand, but before he could strike, Samuel grabbed him, throwing him back into the dirt. Samuel's voice thundered, "He is not alone, not anymore." The villagers erupted their fear, shattering, their voices rising all at once. "No more, no more. We will not watch again." Men and women surged forward, surrounding Daniel and Samuel, their courage finally breaking. Through the silence of years, the tallest man's eyes widened, his confidence shaken. He clutched the blackened book tighter, as if it alone gave him power. "You fools," he shouted, "this book holds the names of all who broke their word. Do you think you can stand against the curse within it?" Samuel's voice rang clear. "Then burn it," he shouted. "Burn the lies, burn the fear." The villagers gasped. Daniel's eyes widened, Samuel's words echoing in his chest. "Burn it, burn the thing that chained him too. His father's sins." The tall man snarled, stepping back, clutching the book tighter. "No, you cannot. The fire will consume more than you know. It will take what remains of his bloodline." But Daniel stepped forward, his small hand reaching, his voice trembling, yet strong. "Then let it take me, if it must. I will not live as a shadow of someone else." The villagers roared their courage, finally united, torches raised, flames blazing the night, filled with firelight. Samuel stood tall, his hand guiding Daniel forward. Together they reached for the book. The tall man screamed, "You do not understand. His father tried and he failed. He lost his life because the book cannot be destroyed." Samuel's eyes narrowed. "Then tonight we find out." The villagers surged forward. The fire lit higher, the men staggered back, and Daniel's trembling hands touched the scorched cover of the book. The moment his fingers brushed the blackened leather, the book pulsed with heat and light. A scream tore through the night, not from Daniel, but from the men themselves, their faces twisted, their bodies writhing, as if the fire inside the book turned against them. The tall man's voice broke. "You fool, you have awakened it now. It will reveal all." The book burst open, pages flying into the night, words carved in flame, names of traitors, thieves, and debts unpaid spilling into the air. The villagers cried out, shielding their eyes. Samuel pulled Daniel close, the boy's body shaking as the light swallowed the road, and then one name burned, brighter than all the rest. Not his father's, not the men's, but the Stepmother's. Villagers gasped to the light, searing her name across the sky. The boy's eyes widened, his breath catching. His stepmother, her name bound to the curse, not his father's. From the doorway of the house she appeared, her face pale, her eyes wide. "No, no, it cannot be," she screamed, the truth exposed in fire. Daniel's world tilted, his chest pounding. She had lied all along. She had hidden her own betrayal behind his suffering. Samuel's voice roared across the fire, "Your cruelty was only to hide your own guilt." The villagers stared in shock, their fear turning to fury as the flames burned brighter. The stepmother fell to her knees, screaming, her secrets tearing free from her lips, and Daniel stood trembling in the blaze, his heart breaking and burning at once as the truth shattered everything he had believed. The book's pages burned one by one, the fire consuming them, the men writhing in pain, their screams echoing through the night, the stepmother's voice rising above them all as she cried out her final lie. Flames leaped higher, swallowing the pages of the cursed book, the names glowing like stars before crumbling into ash. The villagers cried out, some in fear, some in awe, as the truth revealed itself in fire. Daniel clung to Samuel, his small body trembling, but his eyes fixed on the one figure who had tormented him for years, his stepmother. She knelt in the dirt, her hands clawing at the air, her face pale with terror, her voice breaking as she screamed, "No, it cannot be. I did nothing wrong. It was him. It was always him." She pointed toward Daniel, her eyes wild, her lies pouring out like venom, but the flames betrayed her every word. Her name seared into the night sky, her guilt undeniable. The villagers moved closer, their voices rising. "You lied. You punished him for your sins. You made him suffer to hide your shame." Their anger burned hotter than the fire around them. No longer afraid, no longer silence. Samuel's voice cut through the storm, sharp and unyielding. "You made him a slave to cover your betrayal. You broke him to keep yourself safe. But tonight, it ends." Daniel's chest heaved, his eyes wet with tears, but not of weakness, tears of release, tears of truth at last. He saw the chain that had bound him, not his father's shadow, not a curse, but her cruelty, her lies, her guilt. The stepmother's body shook. She fell to the ground, her hands clutching the dirt, her cries filled with desperation. Please forgive me, she begged, her voice hollow and trembling, but the villagers turned away, their mercy long gone, her power shattered. The tall man staggered, his face twisted with pain, as the book consumed itself, his voice breaking. She was the debt, she was the traitor. His body convulsed before falling silent. The others followed their cries, vanishing into the fire, leaving only smoke and ash. The cursed book burned into nothing, its ashes scattering into the night, carried away by the wind, the curse broken, the lies undone. Silence fell heavy but not cruel. This time silence of ending, silence of freedom. Daniel collapsed to his knees, his small hands pressed into the dirt, his tears flowing freely. But for the first time in his life, they were not tears of despair. Samuel knelt beside him, pulling him close, his voice soft but strong. You are free now, Daniel, free to live, not in shadows, not in chains, but as yourself. Villagers gathered around, their eyes filled with guilt and sorrow. They had turned away for so long, they had watched and done nothing, but now they knelt too, their voices rising in unison. Forgive us, Daniel, we should have spoken, we should have stood for you. Daniel looked up, his tears glistening in the firelight. He saw not enemies but people who had finally opened their eyes, people who had finally chosen truth over fear. His lips trembled, but he found his voice. You see me now, that is enough. The stepmother lay crumpled on the ground, her cries fading into silence, her power gone, her lies exposed. She was no longer a figure of fear, only a shadow of what she had been. The villagers turned their backs, leaving her to the emptiness she had created. Samuel lifted Daniel, gently helping him to his feet, his voice filled with warmth and certainty. Come, Daniel, the night is finished. Tomorrow, a new life begins. Daniel's eyes met his, the first flicker of a smile breaking through the years of pain, his voice small but steady. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for not looking away. Samuel's eyes softened. You are stronger than you know, Daniel, stronger than the lies, stronger than the pain. Your scars are not chains, they are proof. You survived and you will rise. The villagers parted, creating a path lined with torches lighting the way. Daniel walked with Samuel at his side, each step heavier with memory but lighter with hope. The night sky above them clear, the flames fading into distant embers. As they reached the edge of the village, Daniel paused. He looked back once more at the place where he had been broken, where his stepmother's cruelty had nearly crushed him, and he whispered to himself, never again will I live in chains. Samuel placed his hand on his shoulder, guiding him forward. The road stretched into the horizon, wide and unknown, but no longer terrifying, for Daniel was not alone. He had been seen, he had been freed, he had found a protector, and perhaps one day he would become one himself. The villagers' voices carried behind them promises of change, promises to never again turn away from cruelty, promises born from shame but rooted in new strength. Daniel knew their words could not erase his past, but they could shape a better future for others like him. The night gave way slowly to the first hint of dawn, the horizon painted with colors of hope. The boy, who once carried wood heavier than his body, now carried only the weight of his own heartbeat, and it was enough. Samuel looked at him, his eyes calm, his voice steady. Remember this, Daniel, sometimes losing everything is the only way to find who you truly are. Daniel nodded, his heart swelling with a strength he had never known before. He had lost his childhood, he had lost his innocence, but he had found truth, he had found freedom, and he had found himself. Together they walked into the dawn, the story of chains, ending the story of freedom, beginning the boy no longer a slave, but a survivor, no longer hidden in shadows, but stepping into the light. The end